on the Disability Network, we aired a story about pregnancy and disability. Laura was pregnant and she's paralyzed from the hips down. She talked about her hopes and fears about being a mother, and she had some questions.
I'm sure the baby will be worth it in the long run, all the frustration, you know. It is, right?
Laura will answer that question on today's edition of DNet, the Disability Network. Hello, I'm Ming Wong. We'll hear about Laura's experience as a new mother. We'll also meet another mom with older children, and we'll find out about some of the supports that are available to parents. Laura arrives at the hospital like any expectant mother. She's anxious, and she's attracting attention. It's not every day that a woman who's disabled and pregnant arrives at the Toronto General Hospital.
We'll be staying on the labor floor until you have the baby because Dr. Curry wants you monitored more closely.
I'm induced around 8, right?
In the morning?
Yeah.
Yes.
Usually what, about a few hours or?
Take somewhere if you're ready 6 hours, if you're not ready up to 24 hours.
Laura's baby boy Draven was born after a very short natural delivery.
Oh, is he beautiful? Look at that little face.
So, oh, my love you so much. I love you so much. It went probably like it would with any woman. I knew I was going to labor. I just had a feeling, and I had the kid.
Mom and Daddy. Here, Laura, here. I'm going to get a really good shot of you, too.
Once they came in with the doctors, I think I had him in like 45 minutes. It's just I did like I think the way I pictured everyone would. You have things to hold on to on the side, and they were telling me when to push and when not to and how to hold my head. It was just like a total natural thing. It was cool. And they picked him up and they said, he's a healthy little baby boy.
During her stay, she received the standard advice given to new mothers. But unlike able-bodied mothers, Laura's not only learning how to take care of her baby, she's learning how to do it with a disability.
It's frustrating, like I said, sometimes, you know, like especially, that's one thing I notice, being in a wheelchair isn't that hard to raise a kid, but when he gets older, I'm starting to worry about it because he's starting to get heavier. And you know, now I find it hard to pick him up when he's on the bed or even in his cradle sometimes. You know, I think I'll be able to work it all out because every problem I've had, I've found a solution for after trial and error and much frustration.
Laura's getting some help from Draven's father, Rob. Unfortunately, Laura and Rob are no longer a couple.
We're just in totally different wavelengths sometimes, I think, you know. Like him with his band and there's always trouble along with that, you know.
Rob's still involved in caring for Draven. If there's something Laura needs help with, Rob does it, like bathing the baby. He's the only one helping her on a daily basis.
I thought everything was going to be so hard. Like I also thought I hate changing diapers. Now it doesn't bug me at all. But as far as like my disability is, it's like I really thought it would be way harder, you know. I thought picking him up, how will I pick him up and wheel around? Oh, I just have to make sure I have a good grip on him, you know. And that's fine. I figured that one out. Every single thing you do for a baby, I thought it would be like 50 million times harder for me. I'm his mom, I'm in a wheelchair, it's all he's ever known me as. So he'll adjust to it and he'll adapt to it and he'll probably, you know, be different than other kids in some ways. And then maybe other kids will tease me when he's in school and he'll stick up for me and he'll fight over me. Oh no, don't talk about my mom that way. But then another thing too, he'll think, wow, cool, when I'm not in it, he'll be riding around in my wheelchair. You know what kids are, eh? He'll be all happy and excited. It's like a toy. Just don't be taking it without my permission.
Laura doesn't have any accessible equipment. She doesn't think she needs any yet. But when Draven gets too big for the cradle, she and Rob are going to try and adapt a standard crib to make it accessible. Meanwhile, she's had to fight for accessibility outside her home.
For his first doctor's appointment, right, I telephoned to book a ride on Wheel-Trans, and I said, okay, I want to book a ride to the doctor. And they said, okay, do you have any escorts? And I said, yeah, I have one escort and my baby. And they said, well, that's 2 escorts. And I said, no. I said, he's 1.5 months old. They said, well, he's still considered an escort. You know, I was thinking, for one thing, how can he be considered an escort? Because I think escorts are people who go along with you to help you out, right? And I'm thinking, what do they think he's going to do for me? You know, he's 1.5 months old. And I just thought, the fact that I had to explain myself to anybody, much less like 20 million people that I talked to, I thought, the fact that I have to speak to even one person about this and fight over my right to be able to have my child on the bus with me with somebody to help me is ridiculous, you know? But I straightened it all out. Now they have on my file that I can have 2 escorts all the time.
Laura's learning new parenting skills each day, but she's only just started. When we come back, we'll see how Tracy, another mother with a disability, made it through the changing needs of her 2 children.
Here's a pencil for you. Thank you. And no peeking.
No, I never peek.
Okay. So you gonna wear this dress?
Tracy has muscular dystrophy. She uses a wheelchair and has limited strength in her upper body. She and her husband Dave have 2 girls. They're 5 and 7. Like most kids that age, they're pretty demanding.
They're gonna edit that out. Heather. Heather. Okay. Have fun.
I'll miss you. I will have fun.
The parenting issues at this age are very different from the ones Tracy had when her kids were first born.
There was nothing that was easier than I thought it would be. Everything was just as hard or tougher than I thought it would be. I didn't know exactly how I would do certain things, like hold the baby, to nurse the baby. And I remember at one point a few OTs coming in and, you know, trying to hook me up to all these different slings so that I could hold the baby in my arms to nurse her. And it was just too bizarre. You know, I couldn't do it. And in the end, what worked best was just having a pillow on my lap till the baby was high enough, because I couldn't hold her up. You know, it's trial and error, and you work it out as you go along. You know, and then as the baby gets bigger, that pillow doesn't work anymore. You need a different size pillow, or, you know, you're doing something else again. So you're always adapting and adapting.
One of the things that did come up was shortly after Katie was born, and when Tracy was at home, and Katie was an infant, and there was me, and there was all these different people coming in and helping out with the baby. And Tracy was sitting there, and she really couldn't do a lot besides nursing. It was pretty difficult for her for a while. One day she said to me, "David, I haven't felt this disabled in years." You know, and it was because there were so many things she wanted to be doing with the baby that her disability wouldn't let her. You know, and so, you know, that's something that we dealt with.
Tracy and Dave had to define their roles as parents. Like all new parents, they argued. But the biggest argument was about socks.
Katie was born in June. Babies always have poor circulation in their hands and feet. So even though it was 30 degrees Celsius outside, and but Katie had cold hands and feet, because babies have cold hands and feet. And Tracy would say, "Oh, her feet are cold. I hate it when I have cold feet. Put socks on her feet so her feet are warm." I'd say, "It's 30 degrees out. If we put socks on her feet will be hot and uncomfortable." And she would, "Well, you don't want to put socks on the baby, and you're just being male, and because you can do it, and I would do it if I could, but I can't. You know, so you should just do it because I want you to." And
That's right.
So when the nurturing assistant came, she put socks on the baby.
That's right.
Nurturing Assistance is a program that Tracy set up herself. She organized it through her attendant care services. A person helps Tracy care for her children, but only under Tracy's direction.
I think it's been really helpful because I've developed my own relationship with them, I think, and I think from a very young age, I have been able to take them out on my own as well, and they're used to listening to me. And, you know, if I had said to them, this needs to be done or you're going to have to go to your room, and they said no, then I could ask that person, please pick them up and take them to their room. So they'd know I could follow through on things. So like at this point now, if I like send them to their room verbally, you know, I mean, they go. They're just used to, you know, knowing that if I say it, I mean it.
Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was.
But I wasn't really worried about equipment because I knew, like, regardless of what the equipment, it wouldn't be enough to, you know, help me do more. You know, what helped me do more was having someone in that role, you know, the nurturing assistant kind of role. And that's what helped me the most. So I wasn't really worried about tracking down equipment or adapted things. What do we do on this, Katie? Is it dice?
Yep.
Katie, who's 7, thinks there are advantages to having a mom who uses a wheelchair.
Just because they're in a wheelchair, they're even nicer. And they can't beat up on you if they're in a wheelchair. They can't even spank you or anything like that.
I thought that they would just be really quick to catch on that if I asked them to do something, I'd need them to do it right away. And they would just listen and just do it because, you know, I would be such a good parent, how could they refuse, right? So all that's out the window because they definitely have their own ideas about things. And if they don't listen to me, they don't listen to David either, so I don't take it personally, right?
Along with discipline, childproofing the house became a concern.
It was a little more difficult to childproof, you know, because the apartment is an accessible apartment. So it just meant teaching them really early what hot meant. So they wouldn't go near a stove, you know, they wouldn't go near the pots and look into things because it's all a perfect height, you know, for them to see. And, you know, we had to pay a lot of attention to that and, you know, be very, very watchful, like really not letting them out of your sight at that toddler stage, that someone always literally had an eye on them because it doesn't take long for them to get into something or get into trouble.
I got the door open, Mom.
I mean, if they fall and they're hurt, if all they want is sympathy, they'll come to me before they'll come to David because I'm much more sympathetic. But if it's a serious thing and they think they need a Band-Aid or they, you know, need something more, then it's David they'll call for. So it's funny how they kind of channel, you know, who they want, and you know, you can tell how serious the injury is by who they go to.
Tracy's learned a lot about being a parent. And even though Laura's just beginning, some people think she's an expert already. When we come back, we'll see how parents can network to get information.
Like if I'm in the kitchen, since I can't walk, like if he's crying or something, I can't run in there to make sure he's all right. So I just wheel him in there in the cradle if he's awake, and or else I put him in his car seat, which is on my kitchen table.
All new and prospective parents devour information, books, pamphlets, TV shows, magazines. But many people say the best kind of information comes directly from the source, especially for people with disabilities. Pat Israel ran the Disabled Women's Network in Toronto.
A book is fine, it's good, but I think another mother can give you a lot of little hints that a book may not even have. And actually very few mothers know where to get the books. I mean, women with disabilities have been having babies for a long time. It's just they've been having babies and struggling alone, not with other women who can help them and talk to them.
You're a good boy now because you're showing off. You're thinking, Mom, I'm really hungry, man.
But it doesn't have to be that way anymore, and Laura's proving that. 2 months as a mother, and she's the expert. Tammy, who also uses a wheelchair, asked to meet her. She wants to find out all she can about pregnancy and parenting, just in case she decides to have a child one day.
I want to know what it's like being in a wheelchair and having a child because I'm single, but I think the information that I have will help me base a decision on whether or not to have a kid. Aren't you at all scared about the future? And
oh, I'm terrified all the time. I'm a neurotic new mother. I worry all the time. I cried the other day because I thought he's growing up so fast, and Soon he'll go away to school and he'll never call me like my brother is with my mother.
Heather Sloman and Sue Riley are occupational therapists. They brought Laura and Tammy together.
And I think the most important thing is just knowing that there's someone out there who's already done it and survived.
We've just recently started to have a consumer group meeting at the Center for Independent Living and have been inviting people who are interested in this service kind of to get people involved in terms of setting up these type of services.
Oh, you can turn. Perfect. Hello. Hello.
Elaine Carty runs a parent support network in Vancouver.
Hi. Can you tell me a bit more about your situation?
The idea for the networking project came after I'd made a visit to England to look at the services for women with disabilities in England. And they have a very active support network in England. They have 300 or 400 mothers who are on a contact register talking one to the other. So we thought, here we should try and start such a thing, and currently there are about 25 to 30 women on the list. The contact register is now being managed and run by one of the women.
Some women need more than information. They need equipment. Elaine Carty has a lot of ideas for many different kinds of disabilities.
This shows a device that can be fitted on a bottle so that a woman can use any limb then to feed the baby.
I think you can probably buy a good crib for a couple $100 or even less than that if you're a non-disabled mom. If you're a disabled mom and the crib that you get has been adapted, that can often run $2,000 to $3,000. And then there's no system afterwards where you could maybe sell that to another disabled mother and at least get part of your money back. And then it could go to another disabled mom after that. There is an agency called Tetra, and it's a group of volunteers who helps people with disabilities adapt or build new equipment. And they have helped disabled moms before.
Oh, hello, Rita. Can you bring in the pictures, please?
Sam Sullivan is the executive director of the Tetra Society in Canada.
What we often find is that some of the products that are available on the market don't fit the needs that that specific person has. So in that case, then we feel that we can, work on either the accessible product or a product that was off the shelf, just a commercial product, and we can adapt that.
Pat Israel says that people with disabilities have to be persistent when searching for information about parenting.
So to me, you should be able to phone almost anyone in the system that exists and be able to get at least some minimal information about pregnancy and disability and becoming a mom. I think that happens sometimes really easily for some women. You just almost luck into it and get the right people. And for some other women, they make maybe 10 to 15 calls and finally do get an answer. It can depend how determined you are.
I'm not used to this. Well, I think you've done a really good job. Not job, but yeah, I think you've done very well.
It is a job.
I needed the information because the information wasn't available when I had my accident. And then when I came back in here in '86, the information still wasn't available. So when I came in this time, it was in my face. So I wanted to grab it while I could because the information wasn't there before. And I think it would help me base a decision on whether or not to become a mother, because it's really scary. And I think mentally I could cope with it, but I don't know if I'm going to be able physically to cope with it.
When we come back, we'll find out what Laura and Tracy think of parenthood.
Sometimes people have, had conversations with me because they're thinking about starting a family and they're trying to decide should they, shouldn't they, and it's really a personal decision. Having kids and raising them up means different things to different people according to the way that you're raised as well. And I think the circle of support is really critical. Like, I don't think I could have done it without David and without family and friends that were around us, and even without the support of my attendant service provider to do that. it would have been very, very difficult. And I'm sure without that support, I would have regretted the decision.
And the teacher went, "Mommy!" And that's how I go here.
One of the things that happens when you're looking at being a parent is you're waiting for things to get back to normal. It doesn't happen. Just don't bother. Early on, we sort of figured out that it wasn't going to get easy. It just gets different.
It just changes. There's always, there's always challenges, and there's always fun stuff at any age.
It's a lot of trouble. But I mean, you never know. Like, I also thought I'd never even have one baby, so who knows? I never know what I'm going to think the next day. But I'm pretty sure I don't want to have any other kids. I think the most important thing to know is that unless I'm one of a kind for this, and I'm pretty sure I'm not, because like, you're going to love your baby so much that it makes it all worth it. And even though things are really, really frustrating for you, especially if you're in a wheelchair, you will work those things out. All you got to do is, you might have to do a bit of trial and error. You may have to go to people for advice, but, it's really worth it. And I think if you want to have a baby, you shouldn't say, I'm in a wheelchair, that will never happen. Because it's really, it's not that difficult if you love your baby as much as I love mine anyway. You don't mind going through the trouble.
If you need information about parenting, start out by contacting Dawn Canada. They may be able to help you directly or put you in touch with someone who can. Many women have found disability-specific associations to be helpful. You can also contact one of the following organizations: the University of British Columbia School of Nursing Parenting Program, the Tetra Society in Vancouver, and your local Independent Living Resource Center. That's our show for this week. I'm Ming Wong. See you again next week. You can write to us at Disability Network, CBC, Box 500, Station A, Toronto, M5W 1E6. That's Disability Network, CBC, Box 500, Station A, Toronto, M5W 1E6. You can fax us at 416-205-3399.
This program is brought to you in part by the Canadian Association of Independent Living Centres, promoting and supporting the development of independent living resource centres across Canada.